Since Lady Gaga tweeted her support for RuPaul's Drag Race many years ago, fans have been clamoring to get Mother Monster on Mama Ru's show. Well, hold on to your weaves, hennies! Cause on the season premiere, Lady Gaga walks into the workroom like any other contestant to join the 13 queens and one mysterious 14th Goyle.
It's a huge win for drag queens and for RuPaul's Drag Race, and it beautifully brings an artist full circle whose roots come from the New York City drag scene. Today, Jackie Huba, author of 2 books on Lady Gaga and drag queens, joins us to talk about how successful drag queens turn their followers into super fans and what you can learn from these gals to make your own business and life a sparkling success.
Plus, audience polls predict who will be the top queens of the season.
Olympic ice skating champion Christy Yamaguchi reminds us why shade is so important.
Lindsay Lohan makes a comeback in her new reality TV series, The Antisocial Network.
And Zac Efron gets into drag in the comedy rebooty of Baywatch.
I'm Fausto Fernos.
I'm Mark Fillion.
And this is Feast of Fun. The time has come for you to show how fierce and fabulous you are, hunty.
Check out our t-shirts inspired by many great moments in drag in our fashion boutique, feastoffun.com/store.
Decided I was not?
Maybe.
I don't know. Ra-ra, ooh-la-la! Mother Monster and Mama Ru, better known as Lady Gaga and RuPaul, are joining forces once again to meet 13 queens and one mysterious 14th Goyle, according to RuPaul, on the premiere episode of RuPaul's Drag Race. Joining us today is marketing expert Jackie Huba, whose interest in women's empowerment in business and audience loyalty led her to transforming herself into a fierce queen. And she's written 2 books on the topic, one about Lady Gaga, Monster Loyalty, How Lady Gaga Transforms Followers into Fanatics, and one about drag queens, Fiercely You, Be Fabulous and Confident by Thinking Like a Drag Queen. Welcome back to Feast of Fun, Jackie. It's always
back,
great.
bitches. Hello.
Hi, it's so good to have you in the home studio this time because we've done podcasts over the phone before and we've actually hung out in LA and in Austin, Texas, where you live. But now you're here in Chicago.
I'm here with you and your puppy. I love it.
And our mannequin, don't forget Alita.
And your delicious big-boobed mannequin.
From what town? From Beloit, Wisconsin.
Beloit,
From Wisconsin.
So, Jackie, how excited are you for your 2 fields of expertise, Lady Gaga and drag queens, coming together in one, I think it's an hour and a half premiere episode of RuPaul's Drag Race?
I have been waiting for this moment for, like 6 years. I mean, to be obsessed with Lady Gaga, to be, I will admit I'm a little monster, and then I wrote an entire book on, how she built her fan base and how companies can do that. I mean, I love her so much. I've met her in person, like she's one of my idols. To then go to being obsessed with drag queens, and it's an easy connection because Lady Gaga is a drag queen. I mean, that's what she created.
It's her aesthetic.
It's a drag persona that she created. And when I went back and looked at my research for when I was doing Fiercely You, I remembered reading about how she said when she was 19, just starting out, and this is in Fiercely You, where she said, I didn't have a lot of confidence. It was a male-dominated recording industry. She was 5'1", like she needed some power. She created this big over-the-top persona to give herself confidence. That's why she did it. With the big hair, big shoulder pads, giant heels. Now she's taller, she's bigger, and that gave her confidence. But that was a drag persona she created, and I was like, oh my God. I see that connection why I got obsessed with drag queens too, because drag queens are amazing. They build these personas that are powerful and fearless, and they love what they do, and that's why I wrote Fiercely You.
How is a drag queen different than, say, a woman in Las Vegas who puts on a lot of makeup and may pad her bra? And like, what makes a drag queen unique and special in terms of marketing and show business?
I mean, to me, there's a lot of people who are reading Fiercely You for the first time who don't even know what drag is. And what I tell them, and you guys can correct me because you're the experts, but to me, it's about building a character and building a persona that has certain characteristics, that might have a certain look, and you might have a certain style. But it's almost like, it's like acting, right? You're like building this persona that may be similar to you or may be very different from you. And to me, that's what drag is all about. And you're doing that for the stage, right?
But you would ask someone like, Willem Belli or RuPaul or, and even Peaches Christ, like they're sort of the same person in and out of drag in some regards. They would argue that they're not, but,
I think
is
Peaches
there a
says that
difference?
she's a little different in drag. Is when she's in drag, she gives herself permission to say things that she would never say as a boy. I mean, she can be she's very entertaining as a boy, very smart and intelligent, but as a drag queen, can say those bitchy, awful comments that she probably just wouldn't allow herself to normally say dressed as a dude.
When I've interviewed 17 queens from Drag Race, and I heard that over and over and over again. I mean, Adore Delano told me, she said, I had such insecurity issues because of her dad didn't accept her. Right. And then so she had a lot of insecurity issues from that. And when she put on Adore, like Adore was a wild child. Adore was like a punk rocker. She could do anything. She could do these amazing things that Danny could never do.
Yeah. And I see that in Faustina sitting right over here, too. It's like as a guy,
You mean me in drag? Yeah, okay. To clarify.
Well, he's a hot daddy as a dude, as Fausto. And then when he puts on the wig and the makeup, it's like there's an energy there that just absolutely changes. The brain changes.
I don't think it's me who's changing. I think it's your perception of me.
No.
And let me be very clear.
When you're in drag, you're much
this.
more performative.
Well, because I'm actually wearing a wig and makeup, and that's the same reason clowns exist,
Right.
And part of it is, I think drag is a catalyst to allow an individual to express themselves fully. But I'm also interested as a performer in seeing what happens when you take away those tools and you're just there naked and raw. And then this sort of reminds me of like why Alaska in her early days as a drag queen insisted in being naked on stage. And we were talking about this earlier before we started taping the show. And I said, well, you know what? Me too. Like I knew a lot of people, even like performance artist Tim Miller, famously in the NEA4, like in the early 90s, it was really important for a lot of gay men to be naked with their dicks hanging out in front of an audience.
Well, it's confrontational. It's also very exciting. But after a while as a performer, you're like, shit, I'm cold.
That floor is cold. Mm-hmm. And part of it was like, it's this idea as I don't know if this is true for everybody, but as gay men specifically, we're sort of the middle children of society. It's really hard for us to get attention. And it's also, we feel like this, we need to be authentic with ourselves. And so drag is this really curious thing because, and you talk a lot about this in Fiercely You, it's that you're becoming the authentic you by pretending to be somebody else.
Yeah, and especially for women, I have to say, because as women, we're kind of taught to not stand out. We don't want to draw attention. I mean, that can cause us a lot of problems, right? We can have sexual assault. We can be demeaned, all these things. And so for generations with women, we've been slowly trying to assert ourselves, but we've always wanted to blend in. And so when you put on a drag persona, it allows you to get under, like to shed all that and showcase with like what you've been hiding. Like, boom, there you are. You can be whatever. You can be a sexy bitch. You can be sassy as hell. You can flaunt what you got where you've been hiding it for a long time. And so that's why I love women now who are getting into drag and allowing themselves to like unleash that. And there's a lot of like you read in the book, there's a lot of psychology behind creating a persona and what that does to unleash and let you get these things out that you would never have done before.
Well, actors will tell you this too. It's like they sort of grow an understanding of themselves by playing, most famously, the guy who played Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. This is a bloodthirsty killer. He's a cross-dressing expert. The character of Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs.
I wouldn't say he was a cross-dresser. He was a psychiatrist.
He was a psychiatrist whose client was Buffalo Bill.
He had one client, yes, Buffalo Bill, who wanted to, that was his motivation.
So in Silence of the Lambs, Jodie Foster's character goes to Hannibal Lecter, who's all locked up safely.
Gets cum thrown on her.
He is an expert on Buffalo Bill. And Anthony Hopkins, in interviews about playing Hannibal Lecter, said, by playing this really far out there, weird character, that's something that has nothing to do with him. He actually learned who he was much better. He understood himself and he grew as a person because of it. And so, I make this really extreme example because I think that's ultimately why we're attracted to theater as human beings, is because it gives us a greatest understanding of ourselves. Now, on this podcast, Mark and I coined when Chelsea Manning was arrested for leaking secrets. Chelsea Manning snuck out all those documents on a Lady Gaga CD. And so we coined the term Gagaflage, which means to hide something by making yourself as dazzling and brilliant and standing out as possible so no one really sees the real you or the real secret.
Wow, Gagaflage.
Gagaflage.
And I never heard that part of the story.
Yeah. So Chelsea Manning snuck out.
That's amazing.
Because they're like,
On
we
a
don't
Lady
need to
Gaga
look at
CD.
this. This is some kind of gay shit up in here. No,
Gay
forget
dance
about
CD.
it.
Who's that?
We should also give credit to Martian Delellis, right?
That was my word.
Oh, was your word?
Yes, it was
Okay.
his idea. He wanted it for the word, but to be clarified, I have I have the receipts, Martian.
Okay.
I have the document. So, lady, in the premiere episode, we've seen in promotions. So we're not spilling anything out there. If you don't want to hear about this,
Move on.
You're probably not. People who are fans of the show already know this. So, is Lady Gaga sneaks in as one of the contestants, and the contestants are instantly kind of like, this person looks a lot like Lady Gaga, and it's revealed quickly that it's Lady Gaga, and they lose their shit. And for you, when you saw that, and I think that's the most brilliant thing, because a lot of judges, a lot of contestants would a lot of judges would want to be in later in the process. They want to meet like the top 5 or the creme de la creme. But Lady Gaga wants to be part of the grassroots. And in your book, Monster Loyalty, you talk about that's always been a critical ingredient in Lady Gaga's success, is always wanting to be there with the unwashed masses. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and what I love, just to go back to the show for a second, what I love is we're now finding out that she is in the entire show. Like from beginning to end, right? Not only she's in the workroom a long time. They've been releasing a lot of clips. I don't know if you've seen where she keeps talking to them. Like she's in the entire episode. And I can't wait to see it, because what you saw in some of these clips where she's in the workroom, she's telling them like, I grew up in New York. I grew up loving drag queens. Like, this is why I've done. I can't wait to see exactly what she says. But
you are why I am who I am.
Yeah, she's going to talk about how they influenced her and how that helped her understand how to build this character. I'm sure she's going to say that. And I love that. And I love, too, that she probably feels like in some way her participation in the show is almost like giving back, because they influenced her and RuPaul influenced her. She's going to, as much as she could do for them, I'll be in the whole show. I'm sure she said to them, and they were like, great. We're happy to have that. We're happy. She's willing to give herself and connect with people.
Her strength as a business comes from being part of the community and staying there.
Well, she's felt like she's been, I talk about in my keynotes too, where a lot of people don't realize when Gaga first started, she couldn't get her records played anywhere. She had a demo record, nobody would book her, none of the clubs would book her. She couldn't
even get on this podcast. Just to clarify, okay, Stephanie Germanotta was pitched to us as a cabaret musician.
Yeah.
And we were like, another
one. We had
one.
just had a couple of cabaret people on, and we got a lot of letters from listeners being like, please don't have any more cabaret artists. Those are the worst shows. But in retrospect, I wish I had made an exception for her.
Well.
And Katy Perry. Well, we were one. We said
missed
yes
her.
to. We missed Katy Perry by a week. But
she blew up.
And the part of it is forever, one day we will hopefully interact with Lady Gaga again. But I think the interesting thing that excites me about Lady Gaga, as opposed to other entertainers, is that she's really invested in being part of the community that she came from.
Yeah, because I was going to say, she couldn't get booked, but the very first place that booked her was a gay bar in New York City. And then another one and another one. Then she got booked by the San Francisco Gay Pride Parade. And that, her whole following, in case people who are listening to this podcast know this, but I tell my audiences this because they don't get it. That's how she developed a following was from the LGBT community. And so when she got to be bigger and have a bigger voice, she was like, these are my people, and I'm going to stand up for them. And she, in 2009, I have a shot in my slides of her in the one of the marriage equality rallies in Washington. And
2010, I believe.
Was it 2010? She was just coming up.
Wasn't it?
No, it's 2009.
9? Okay.
Yeah, I wrote a book on it.
Well, we went to it.
I'm just kidding.
I thought it was 2010.
Where's
but no,
your-
I looked it up the other day because I was like,
you're right, because it was right after the 2008 election.
Yeah, and so she's got this like these glasses on, this white shirt, and she goes, "Do you hear me, Obama?" Remember that one where she's screaming?
I do remember that.
Remember
we were
that?
there.
Yeah. And I mean, I love how like she is dedicated to this community, right? And she like her entire career has supported them. And so this is like the gay Super Bowl. I mean, she's probably just like so excited to be there.
Is Lady Gaga different than, say, someone like Madonna or Katy Perry or Rihanna or Beyonce? Because they're all sort of like reaching out to their grassroots communities. Are they sort of following a trend that she started, or do you feel like she has something unique still that other entertainers, especially female entertainers, don't have?
Well, I think the way she built her career was very unique, and that's why I wanted to write a book about it. Like when she started out, she realized, and she told her fans that she's like, I am no one if you, like, I'm here for you. And if you guys did not follow me and listen to my music, then I don't have a career. So I dedicate everything I do to you. And this is why this whole idea of the Little Monsters started, because she was very humble in the way that she was not unreachable. She was extremely approachable and reachable, and she would have the fans come on every single concert tour. In the beginning, she would have fans come in the tour bus, and she knows their names. And even now, 9 years later, she is still in contact with those core fans she started with. And I was telling you earlier, she invited them to the Super Bowl so they could be on the field with her.
And a lot of those fans those sort of grassroots fans, like most famously is the drag coven. They're also fans of drag queens like Alaska. So when Mark and I performed with Alaska, we sort of got to meet them backstage. And these girls, they're like Grateful Dead heads of the 1970s and 80s. They follow their favorite entertainers around the country and break the bank just so they can rub shoulders with them. And it's not like they're trying to start a business or to even develop their own entertainment careers.
But what I love about Courtney, the way Courtney
from Drag Coven.
Yeah, Courtney Conkers is her drag name. But I met her because she graduated with a degree in gender studies, and she had done a thesis on gender studies and feminism and Lady Gaga. And she cited Monster Loyalty in it.
Oh, wow.
And she contacted me, right? And so we knew each other ever since. And then somehow we both got into Drag Race. But Courtney, I think one reason why she's really attracted to drag is because of this idea of how drag flaunts gender, right? And it is a study in gender and transforming genders. And I think that, while they are super fans, she's such a deep and intellectual person around this study of gender, and I love that. Plus, she just
and that's the real appeal for a lot of, especially fans of drags are very young women, and the appeal of it is because they're kind of figuring out, what is a woman? What is a woman supposed to dress? How is she supposed to act? And drag, in many ways, kind of informs that because it turns it on its ear in many ways.
And says, you can act any damn way you please, honey. That's these teenage girls who love Drag Race. I think it's because they're trying to figure out who they are. And they're attracted to these women who are like, fuck that. I can be anything I want to be. That's what drag is. You can be anything you want to be. As RuPaul says, it's the most powerful thing you could ever do is become the image of your imagination. Which is on the cover of my book.
That's actually a quote from me.
It's a quote from RuPaul on the cover of my book, honey.
Let's clarify one thing. In the 2 years ago in our Kickstarter for Cooking with Drag Queens, before that was expressed, is a drag queen is anyone who transforms themselves into a beautiful creature of their own imagination. And I have receipts. And it's published and documented.
So she modified it a little bit.
She modified it, and I say, I don't take it personally when somebody takes something, because RuPaul loves one of her favorite catchphrases is, "Ooh, girl, consider that stolen." And for me, it's if you're going to take ideas, take my best ideas and be better at them than I am. And
there you go.
So with a lot of these drag queens that you sort of know, you've seen some of them really succeed in this very difficult, complicated, unprecedented game of entertainment and showbiz, the business aspect of it. What do you think, the season 9 girls and people who face themselves in an overwhelming success or attention for their business or their careers? You finally get that job you really wanted. You got this amazing article about your project in the New York Times. You got on RuPaul's Drag Race. What can they be doing right now to cultivate and grow their careers.
Yeah, and I think it's learning these secrets of how to build a following and sustain it. One of the first things that hits me so many times, I've talked to a lot of these new famous drag queens, where they all of a sudden get fame. There's this really interesting thing that happens, and I've talked to other people like this too, where the concept of themselves having a fan is weird to them, and I'm like, bitch, get over it. Like, people love you.
Yeah.
It's like, get over it. But they don't want to think about them as following them. They want to think about them as equals. Like, it's almost like they're too humble. They don't realize that, no, you have fans, and they don't know what to do with that concept that where they're now rising above what a community they used to be part of. I'm like, well, you got to get over that and realize that people want to follow you. They want to support you. And then you got to find ways to bring them closer to you.
So become Jenny from the block. Like, remember and create content that sort of acknowledges and incorporates your community and all these other communities. I really like how Alaska does this. Whenever she travels to a town, instead of sort of bringing her band or backup dancers, she travels with some people, but she really goes out of her way to hire and pay for local queens and entertainers to work with her on stage. And so it becomes really fun to see sort of like this famous drag queen and other famous drag queens interacting with your local superstars.
Well, it also builds incredible goodwill within the community, because, you know, a lot of these queens get jealous of the Drag Race girls because they come in and they mop up all the money.
Right.
And so it's important to kind of give back so that, you know, you continue to support the community and the community supports you.
Yeah.
One thing I would love to see more people and businesses do, and I don't see this enough, is to collaborate on other people's projects. And I think, like, you know, a very super simple way to do this is to find, like, interesting video bloggers, podcasts, content creators, and volunteer or participate in their projects, just so you can sort of, like, extend your experience into their world. So a lot of them, for them, the idea of collaborate is for, you know, someone to sing rap vocals in their song. But more exciting to me is to see, like, you know, Ginger Minge be a guest appearance on somebody's video blog. I think that's, like, really cool to see these characters in unusual places. When you talk, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I moderated a panel last year at RuPaul's Drag Con on branding. And so we had some of the top people from Drag Race who were some of the best marketers out there. And someone who does this really well in terms of collaboration, I got to say, honestly, is Laganja Estranja. When you look at the things, like, just even for her own brand that she's collaborated with, I mean, the fact that she's I love it. She's got her whole ganja thing, and then she takes it even further, right? So she has, like, ganja-themed clothing, ganja-themed shoes. She partnered with a weed company, and they sell blunts. I don't know how they do this, but they're
it's
like,
legal in California.
Okay, well, there you go, right? And so they're co-branded. She now has her dog, and she's now getting into pet clothing that's ganja-themed. And she's collaborating in these other audiences, but still connected to her own stuff. But I love how she's taking her brand and then merging with other people's brands who are connected, but it broadens what she's doing. And it's just brilliant the way she's extended, as they call it, line extensions.
Well, and that's, like, you know, definitely, like, create and sell your own merchandise, and don't hand that over to a third party to do that, because ultimately you're collecting the names and addresses of the people who are willing to spend money on your business, on you. And it's heartbreaking. And no matter how many times I tell these to queens, it's like, you know, if you can't collect the email of that T-shirt you sold, then you're not really selling that T-shirt to your fans.
Because you're selling that T-shirt, but the most important thing about selling that T-shirt is you have that fan now, and you have that connection with that fan, and that's important, because that will come in. That will all make sense later.
Right, and actually, it's one of the concepts I talk about in Monster Loyalty. That this is like Lady Gaga's #1 strategy, and that is this idea of she focuses almost a lot of her time on 1% of her audience. I call them the 1%ers. Like, these are the diehard. These are the little monsters, not just the casual fans, but people who will stay with you for the long term. Right? She went so far as to talk about having an email list. She built her own site, littlemonsters.com, just for them, like, years ago, right? So they would be right here, and she was in that community
Yeah,
Their own
it's
social
like Donald
network.
Trump and his Twitter. Like it's like you reach out directly to those people that follow you.
Lord, you made that connection.
But no,
I don't say this, you would,
listen, but that is Trump's success, is that he's used that Twitter account to, he bypasses
Brainwash.
the traditional media.
I know, but it's still
and so you go right to the people, and so that's why you have
But it wasn't a closed community.
Yes.
Like LittleMonsters.com was a closed community where...
Well, Trump has that too. It's called the KKK.
My God.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing because I love America.
But you brought up an interesting point before we started taping, is that a lot of these progressive grassroots organizations have been found an urgency to organize better in the wake of Trump's takeover of the White House and of our government. And you're observing some really exciting and creative ways they're doing this to reach out to their audience.
Yeah. So I've just been so obsessed with the election and what the progressives are doing because they're having to battle back. So you see these groups like Indivisible, you see Pantsuit Nation, which is a Facebook group. You see media properties like Robert Reich, who used to be the Secretary of Labor, I believe, for Clinton, who has this new Resistance Report Facebook Live show. And then podcasters. I don't know if you guys follow Crooked Media. But they are ex-Obama staffers who were his speechwriters, and before the election they had a podcast called Keeping It 1600. But then they were devastated by the election, so they actually formed a progressive media company called Crooked Media, and now they're just rolling out podcasts. And the first one's called Pod Save America, and it's amazing. Like, they're breaking down what's happening in the news, and then they bring on all these ex-Obama staffers to like help you understand it.
And it's talking about politics, especially in the wake of Trump's election, is really difficult to talk to. I know that when we bring up that topic in this show, we are faced with a portion of our audience who are Trump loyalists. LGBT people who are Trump loyalists. Let that sink into you.
I think like 20% of gay people voted, or queer people voted for Trump.
And that's very disheartening considering what Trump's policies actually are. That even such a significant portion of LGBT people would vote against their own interests in such a profound way. And when we have a 13-year relationship with some of these individuals, bring that up, they feel betrayed not by Trump, but by us. And so this is an interesting thing in terms of queens or entertainers who find themselves in projects that they feel like they're maybe at odds with. They feel like it's not a good fit for them. They're feeling like they're at odds with it. My advice to them is like, no one's requiring you to be on RuPaul's Drag Race or any television show. Make your own media. And back to the collaboration aspect, like, not to plug Cooking with Drag Queens, but we spend a lot of money to create a video that a lot of people will watch that doesn't cost the queens any money to be a part of. But and some queens, for whatever reason, then I'm sure they have good reasons to do this, rather spend $20,000 or even a lot more money to make their own music video that has exactly the same number of views,
and sometimes less,
and sometimes even less. So to me, it's why collaboration is important. It's not just because it gets you out of the house, it gets you into new audiences, but it's also extremely cost efficient.
Exactly. And going back to the idea about the following is that, these podcasters that I mentioned, like
Pod Save America.
Pod Save America is their first one. Pod Save the World is the second one. They have two more. Like, they realize, like, if they're going to build a following, they're doing offline meetups in the cities where they are. They did a live taping in Brooklyn so that they got to meet the people. They were at Southwest. They did 3 events at Southwest. So they got to meet their fans. I had my Pod Save America shirt on, and some other people did too. But they're learning, like, it's not just like over the earbuds that you're building that relationship, but you can also do it in person. And like, this is very Lady Gaga, right? This is very like building such a grassroots following. And I think these queens can do the exact same thing. But you got to realize your audience is there for you. You need to serve them and build that grassroots thing and have, you have your social media, but if you have an email list, even better, because you're going to mine that. Who knows what projects you're going to do over the years, right? If you're going to be around for a while, you want their direct contact information. I agree with you on like maybe selling the stuff yourself and building that database. People still use email.
Without a doubt. We have, and you can sign up for our newsletter. Just go to Feast of Fun, and it's there. and we send out some email blasts every now and then.
Social's good, but email is direct and one-to-one.
Well, and that's the problem. Is like I think email's very complicated, and it requires paying money with a service of some kind. If your list is bigger than 2,500, Mailchimp is one example of that.
Not that much.
It's not that much money, but for somebody who's just getting started, it might be a significant investment. But ultimately, I think that investment is critical because with social media, and we're starting to see this with Facebook and with Twitter, a lot of these companies don't have your best interests, and they're actually locking you away from reaching your own audience. One example is for us, we have about 10,000 likes on our Facebook page, which is not a lot of much. But in order for us to reach that audience, we have to pay to promote the post to the people who want to see it. So what's much cheaper is just to maintain an email blast and send that out to people. And ultimately, like if you're really a fan of somebody, urge them to make an email blast and maintain it, because ultimately that's how you're going to know that queen's coming to your town. Any kind of social media is going to limit that to some degree.
Right.
One thing that I notice a lot of queens don't do, and we're guilty of this as well, is take breaks. Just relax.
Yeah.
Sit down. Go on a vacation.
Take a few months off.
One
of these summers, I'm taking a summer off, the whole summer.
Well, I gotta say,
for it.
if you're in a creative field, you need to take a break.
Yeah, exactly.
I see these poor queens working their asses off, and I wonder how they get anything creatively done besides touring, because
what's a money issue?
I mean, when you look at TV shows and things like that, or plays, they all take breaks. They all take hiatuses. They all take those times off because you need to recharge your brain and to keep it going. We've been doing this podcast for 13 years.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
But so, and I think the reason we don't take breaks, and a lot of the entertainers and businesses don't do this, especially like I've talked to a lot of businesses who actually been featured on Oprah when Oprah was on television. Their biggest challenge was just like once their, chocolate covered sesame seed company was featured on Oprah's favorite things, suddenly their business grew so big that they couldn't take any more breaks. And I've observed that with us too. Like we got really big early on, and then it's like, and then sort of you like, in order to maintain your bills and to pay your bills, you sort of have to keep going, and not being able to take a break is a really hard thing to do. So is there any solution to that? Or is that just something where you just have to bite the bullet and take a financial hit just so you can like clear your head?
I mean, it doesn't have to be a long break. I mean, honestly, like I see these queens touring nonstop, never stop. It's just like
Bianca Del Rio is notorious for that.
Yeah, I mean, I just see them week after, and they're so tired. It's interesting because I think the ones who are financially able to take a break are the ones who least do it, which is very interesting.
Because they're like, do I
want to make all the money now?
$3,000 now? Because like next year I won't be able to necessarily make as much money.
Yeah, but if you've completely worn yourself out, that's going to spiral in a way that for your health, I would think you wouldn't want to. So, I mean, a week off,
what about rappers and marketing and the way, like, for drag queens have this reputation for being like having large egos and being like, I'm the greatest person. Like they all sort of triumphantly march into RuPaul's Drag Race, and they're like, I'm the best girl you've ever seen, and I'm going to be America's Next Superstar. Watch out, world. And part of the fun of RuPaul's Drag Race is seeing those egos be popped. But I noticed that like a lot of musicians, especially like hip hop or rap artists, they're bragging and boasting and say you're the number one of something can actually be very, very efficient in building their audience's self-esteem up. Like we're part of the winning team, and it's not necessarily about changing the perception of what you do. It's about inspiring your audience to root for you. What do you think about that? Like, because we've seen that on both sides of the political spectrum, and there's a lot of controversy. You've said that there's some business writers who are like, I'm the number one, retail marketing person, or, we've gotten criticized for saying that we're the number one LGBT podcast when we have been.
I should tell that story. I'll tell it in the book.
You'll send it in the book. But how do you make, you're the marketing expert. Like, should queens, should businesses be saying they're the number one of something or not? Or, what's the final word on that?
Yeah. Well, okay. So first of all, there's facts. There's facts.
Alternative facts?
No, real facts. If you're the number one of something, then you should say that. Like, if you're number one on the bestseller list, that's a fact. Somebody could prove it, right? You hit the bestseller list. Now, secret, I don't know if people know this, you can buy your way on that list. And so we see authors do that. But they still hit the list. They bought their way there. Whatever, they're still number one.
But even if you win an award, like I've even noticed this, like when queens win RuPaul's Drag Race, they're America's Next Drag Superstar. Other people resent them for rubbing it in. They're like, you don't have to rub it in my face.
No, that's a problem with the person who's saying it. Like, okay. If you are the number one of something, what's harder is that in a lot of businesses and for a lot of us, there might not be a definitive, like, factual ranking. So now you start to take liberties. So you see a lot of authors will say best-selling. Like, even I say best-selling.
Sure.
But there's not a lot of metrics around what that is. If you don't hit a list, a bestsellers list, you still could be selling well, so a lot of us say best-selling. Are we lying? No, we're saying best-selling. That's a little subjective. And I was telling you earlier, like, I was talking to a woman author the other day, and we were commiserating how we take it. We're even worse about promoting ourselves, and like, I coined the term customer evangelism, but I didn't even put that in my bio for years until last year. Like, why? I wrote a book called Creating Customer Evangelists. The word customer evangelism never existed.
Because you like Christian customers.
Sorry?
She lives in Austin, Texas.
Customer evangelist.
And you hear the word evangelist.
It's no.
Can I tell you about the Lord and these products?
No. It's a secular word that means preaching, preaching the word.
Yeah.
But I never said that in my bio, like that I had coined this term, Jesus. And I have there's another thing called the 1% rule that my co-author and I researched and wrote about, and it's in Wikipedia. And like, somebody pointed that out to me a couple months ago, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's not in my bio
either.
What's
the 1% rule?
The 1% rule is what I was talking about, where you have a customer base, and you find that the most engaged super fans are often 1% of the fan base. It's not 80-20. Like some people might think.
It's always 1%.
It's small. It might not be 1. It might not be 1, but it's very small.
Yeah.
And there was, I don't know if you saw this, there was a stat that I have in my presentation that says for most companies, 4.7% of a customer base is responsible for all the social media mentions of that company.
Wow. I talked to a guy who was a fundraiser for organizations, and he said actually that you get 90% of your fundraising money from 10% of your audience. And I look at the numbers of the downloads, and I look at the numbers of Plus members, and unfortunately, I think we're even a little bit less than that 10%. So there's about 90 some percent out here that aren't Plus subscribers.
Right.
And how does someone become a Plus subscriber?
Well,
Mark?
you go to feastoffun.com/plus, and you can choose your option, because becoming a Plus member is the best way to make sure that this podcast continues. You love what we say, you love what we do, you want to support it so that we're here in the future.
The Feast of Fun is a space for these ideas to exist, and you don't want to be a square and not support it. So make sure you go not be a square and go to our space, feastoffun.com/plus, because we don't have any ads. You are making this possible.
This would not exist without these folks.
Yeah.
That's right. Should we go out of business in marketing? This is an interesting thing. It's like success is so big, so intense, that it actually makes some people go out of business. They say, you know what? I cannot, as a human being, I can't handle this success. And we've seen that drag queens say, I'm quitting drag forever. We see businesses that got featured on Oprah's Favorite Things. They're just like, you know what? This is driving us insane. This is not why we became cake makers or dressmakers, and they close up shop. And part of it is like, I think that this is a fascinating phenomena, is that part of what creates people's businesses or entertainment careers is the thirst and desire for success. But when they actually get the success they dreamt about, they lose interest in it.
Well, I think that's probably true. But I will say that all of these, if you're a drag queen, if you're whatever, it's still a business. And I don't know if you've ever read this book called The E-Myth, but it's a very interesting conundrum. And the myth is that just because you created the business doesn't mean you can run the business. right? And so for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially
Sure.
on the artistic side, you might be really good at this thing. That doesn't mean you're good at running a business.
Sure, that's like the guy who founded Groupon. You know, it was
Andrew Mason.
a brilliant idea, but he lasted a few years, and then finally they're just like, listen, you need to check out.
Right, exactly. And so the challenge is to find people to help you run the business and do the stuff that drives you nuts, right? Like the email lists and the social media and all of that. Keep doing what you're doing, but find a way to bring people in to help you with this, and they're going to help you grow because you don't have those skills and you hate that shit. So this is, unfortunately, it's challenging, especially like if you're someone who's a drag queen just starting out. Like, how do you?
It's find your tribe.
Well,
As RuPaul likes to say this, and this was advice that I was given when I was a young drag queen, is you got to find your community, your small clique of people that you're going to stick with through the rest of your life, your family, to help you be part of this career. You know, like I wouldn't be able to do this podcast if it wasn't for Mark, if it wasn't for Jeffrey J, for Brian Sweeney, for Talia Pasqua, for Meg Grunwald, for Jeff Knutson. Like those are our people who have been with us for a long time. And, you know, we don't see them behind the scenes, but they're an integral part of what we do.
And, you know, an interesting phenomena, too, is in terms of fan behavior, what we'll see is that if you have this really rabid following, there are people who will help you do things. They're happy to volunteer. Like these 1%ers, what I've observed, they're happy to volunteer. And so I would say, especially if you're a drag queen, you got a lot of fans, like there's a lot of talented people. When you're just getting started, maybe I've actually seen brands where a fan will start the fan page.
Sure.
And create it. And then the brand's like, oh my God. And they start working with them and they find that they can trust them. And then they'll take it over later. But they'll at least trust the fans. And I think, like, if you needed a t-shirt design or if you needed something and you were a queen, I bet you would have someone in your audience who'd be like, oh my God, I'm a marketing person. Like, I will run your email list. Like, let me help you do that. I'll even donate, like, the cost of it. Like, I'm sure that would happen if people would find ways to trust some people. And just when you're getting started, you need that stuff.
And the way to differentiate between a fan and a stalker is that fans will do things for you, whereas stalkers are inherently lazy. And so they want to take all their emotional bullshit. It's true. They want to take all their emotional bullshit that they're going through and kind of like put it on you.
Yeah.
And so the way you kind of deal with that is you try and see if you can get them to do something for you. And because like stalkers, if you try and have them do something, they'll just go away.
Yeah.
You know?
Most of the time
they'll just kind of go away.
Yeah.
Not all the time. Sometimes they hunt you down and kill you. But as we've seen before, it's happened. But you know, if you ask them to do stuff a lot of times, you know, and it kind of changes the dynamic of the relationship. So it's not all about them and their weird emotional bullshit that they're putting on you. They're actually contributing to your life and you're giving them something back, and it changes that dynamic.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not suggesting at all people should try to, like, you know, take advantage of their fans in any way. But definitely when you're starting out and you don't have all the things that you need, like people want to help. Like, let them help.
Well, and that's why you are pointing out at these super fans of Lady Gaga and drag queens. They have a skill, and their skill is really good at asking for the things they need or want. And ultimately, you know, they cannot. I'm sure these girls or these guys, they get 100 no's, but they get that one yes, and suddenly they're on stage with, you know, Marco. I mean, they're doing extraordinary things that seem so out of reach for the us mortals, but somehow because they're just persevere, that's ultimately what gets them to where they need to be. You know, one of the challenges for people who are working behind the scenes, and from the people that I talk to who create reality television, is that everybody's really savvy now. Everyone knows how to play the game. They listen to podcasts like this, and they're like, if you get on RuPaul's Drag Race, stop fighting with the other queens. You're just making enemies of their fans. And so the challenge is now in season 9, if I've heard this a lot, is that the queens are too nice to each other. They're too cooperative. And that's going to cause problems. And they're like, when the judges are harsh on them, they're like, okay. They're receptive to it. You know, I'm like, oh my God, this is.
Are you telling me this is going to be a boring season?
It's a challenge to, you know, because I say to people, only God can judge the queens. But in the meantime, I'll do the job. And you know, it's important to throw shade. Shade is an important function because And I heard Carl Sagan talk about shade in an interesting way, of all people.
The cosmetologist?
I can't wait for this.
Carl
What?
Sagan said the reason we have rituals...
Wait for the listeners out there who don't know who Carl Sagan is.
So Carl Sagan was a scientist who was involved in jet propulsion laboratories to studying the atmospheres of planets. And he was instrumental in the Voyager 1 and 2 Voyager probes that gave us all these amazing photos of Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune. And
he wrote a couple books, and he did the TV show
Uranus.
called Cosmos, which Neil deGrasse Tyson revamped for Netflix.
So anyways, in one of his books, he talked about how we as society, as human beings, have this dark side to us that we have a need for war. We have a need to fight for each other. And so we create these rituals that becomes proxies for that battle that actually save lives and save face. And so shade is this ritual that we have, this coded way of talking to each other that allows us to fight and resolve our differences, but at the same time still be part of a family. And so when shade works well, it's for me to be able to say the most hurtful, mean things to you, and you don't get offended by it. You're able to hear it and laugh and move forward. And ultimately, like, that's what Carl Sagan was talking about, like the importance of sports and other types of rituals in our society is that these rituals protect us from harming each other in permanent ways.
So if I can do a clever turn of phrase about like this terrible outfit that you're wearing, rather than just taking a hammer and hitting you in the head.
Well, and part of it is, sometimes words really permanently hurt each other. And so I think like disenfranchised communities, people who don't always have access to power or recognition, create ways of talking to each other that are constructive, and we've seen in documentaries like Paris is Burning and Kiki, a new film, that people who are in the part of the ball community sometimes fight with each other and pull out knives and stab each other. Or sometimes we can fight with our words in a way that's constructive and funny and entertaining and engaging.
It's funny in Fiercely You, though, I'm talking to a lot of women in that book because shade is something that they really have struggled with because we as women take things very personally, right? And so that's why I'm like, think like drag queens, because drag queens are like, it's just a battle back and forth with like a wink and a nod insult, whatever, like get over it. And you're like, yeah. And you shake that off. Like that's what we as women need to do. When people are saying these mean things to us or criticizing us, we do get more criticism. Like if you look at statistics,
without a doubt,
in the workplace, we get criticized on our performance reviews way worse than men do, especially on our personalities that are abrasive.
Sure, and your shrill voices, and you're
all that
and
bullshit.
you don't know how to do anything.
Yes,
yet.
and
Did
I'm
you see there was a guy who exchanged email signatures with a coworker of his?
Yes,
and so he was like, "I've never had so many problems. This has been the worst week of my life because people think I'm this girl."
Right.
And the girl who has his thing, she's like, "My God, this is like a breeze. Your job is so easy. You tell somebody something and they believe it. Whereas here they just question it."
Yeah, and
It's
so
crazy. It's misogyny. It's part of the reason why Hillary Clinton's not president.
Totally. But this is the world we live in. So you got to learn to shake that shit off. And that's why, I'm like, ladies, think like drag queens. Like, shake that shit off and get an insult and, put it back.
But it's important to seek and establish ways of talking to each other that allows us to express what we want to say, but we feel like we can't say it. And it was interesting, like when you came in, and I don't remember what you threw some shady comment at me.
About how you're an old drag queen?
Yes. And you were like cackling so much about it, and I was just like, "It's true." And you were like so much. There was so much joy in your face and in your voice.
Because I know you well enough that I can rib you about being old, like you are, and then trying to be on Drag Race and being one of the older queens.
Shh, that's a secret.
Because now that you're 50, it's like
I'm old enough. Once I saw Charlie Highs, I was like, "Oh, they're accepting senior citizens now."
Yes.
Well, what's nice if you do try out Fausto, you won't be the oldest queen ever to be on there unless you wait a few more years.
Just the second oldest.
Well, I hope that show's still around. I gotta say, I'm very happy that it's on VH1. A lot of people are like, "This is the end of Logo." I don't think logo's necessarily going anywhere. I think they're just kind of figuring out what to do with it. But
Well, they have that, that new reality TV show that's going to blow them all out of the water at Fire Island, right? So they're going to be just fine.
No, I am excited. This is going to be the biggest year for Drag Race ever.
Oh, without a doubt.
And I just think it can't get any bigger. And then the next year, it gets bigger.
Well, and you just see, RuPaul's just been doing an interview everywhere, talking to everybody, and just, announcing she's been married since January. It now has another TV show coming.
Another TV show about
based
her
on
life.
her life. Yeah,
Yes.
so it's just exploding.
Yeah.
And we see
Meanwhile-
Zac Efron in drag now.
so Zac Efron is getting up in drag for the new Baywatch reboot movie. And she looks pretty cute.
Mm-hmm.
It's undercover. It's always like, there's always an excuse.
Oh, yeah.
Don't get me started on this stuff.
You're not a fan.
Well, here's what bugs me. And
Yeah.
maybe it's just that stupid lip sync battle show, which drives me insane. Because
Do you watch it?
I only watch these clips that appear online, right?
Sure.
Like, I don't watch the show. But when they have, who was it? Tatum. What's his name?
Channing
Tatum
Tatum
did
in
Beyonce,
drag.
right?
God damn, when he did Beyonce, it's like, if you are going to really, impersonate Beyonce, do full drag. Let's see some makeup. It's like, can they not, are they afraid to be really feminine? Is that,
Oh, yeah,
Is that why
without a
they won't
doubt.
do the Screw you.
Yeah.
Put on some
I
makeup.
think they were
Come on.
trying. They just don't know what they're doing.
But
Yeah.
every single time,
Why
the guy,
did they not hire a drag makeup artist?
please, please. And what was the guy who did Janet Jackson? His 3 names, Hewitt.
I don't know. I don't remember. I didn't see it.
I know who you're talking about.
The guy,
but yeah.
he did the full Janet Jackson outfit. He did Rhythm Nation with the dancers, and I'm like, what about the face?
The mug,
face.
baby.
The mug.
Beat it.
What are you afraid
Jackie,
of, people?
I've been saying this since the
Come
dawn
on.
of time. Dancers don't know what to do with their faces. Ever.
Well, I feel like these straight men don't know what to, they're afraid to put on the face, and that bugs the shit out of me.
You go to a dance recital, you go, look at one great example is if you look at videos of Alyssa Edwards with her students dancing, they all have what I call stank face or stone cold face. They're just like, I can't show you, but they're just like,
Right.
they're moving their bodies amazing, and their face is just completely solid as a rock, not expressing, not moving. And in an Indian culture, the face has its own choreography and dance moves. So the position of your eyes and your mouth is choreographed as well. Because dance, when you're concentrating, you forget that we can see your face, right? I want to chime in on this because there's a lot of speculation on what's going to happen on the season because, like any popular TV show, everybody wants to talk about it, right? And RuPaul and Michelle Visage and other judges go on talk shows or in their own media, and they're always like complaining that, why do you fans want to know what's going to happen? Why can't you guys just enjoy it? This is like a Christmas present, and you're just like, you're peeking underneath the wrapping paper, trying to find out what you got, and you're just going to ruin it for yourself and for everybody.
Well, they're not asking the question why they're doing it. They're telling you why you're doing it. They say you do it because it's your ego, because your ego is getting fed.
Well, Mark, as a person who enjoys peeking underneath the gift wrapping paper for your Christmas presents, what's the value in doing that?
You get to find out what you're getting.
And why would you just not wait until you actually open the
Because
presents?
you're too excited. You want to know. You want to know. You want that gratification.
And part of it is, I think sometimes you savor the moment even more when you sort of like know what's to come, but to fully experience it is a very different thing.
Sure.
But as a content creator, we have an example. Katya came on Cooking with Drag Queens, and she filmed herself doing this on her Instagram and never gave us any credit. And then she like showed the kitchen, and it was like, and it felt to me like it was like letting the wind out of the balloon.
Yeah, but
by sort of like, but at the same
it's also
time,
a teaser.
It was also a teaser, but it never like sort of helped increase the view counts of the videos,
Which are extraordinary anyway. Biggest, huge.
and so they're talking about this is like when Perez Hilton revealed who the season 3 winner was on his blog before the final episode went on the air. Logo and Viacom were really distressed because it would hurt viewership when you know what's going to happen or the contents of what's happening. And so there's this tension that's happening out there, whereas like people are very passionate, people are very exciting, the people want to savor the moment by knowing what's going to happen. And yet at the same time, the people who pay for it want to make sure there's a maximum number of eyeballs watching it.
And like I personally, I would never spoil who is gonna win. Like if I knew for sure, like if I knew. But the thing is like you just had to watch season 3 and to know that she was gonna win anyway. You know, she was clearly a front runner for that. So I won't. But you can do conjecture, right? And
there's
you can
science.
guess.
There's science behind it.
There's polls now.
So just like we poll for the United States president, who thought it was going to be going for Hillary, they're actually, the RuPaul's Drag Race subreddit is doing their own scientific polls. Take it with a grain of salt. Would you like to hear what the results of those polls are?
This is the most amazing poll, though. This is the one that has the most people are convinced about this kind of thing. Is there like, who do you think is going to go home first? And there's a resounding. All the other people are like 3% chance, 4% chance, 10 like 0.0% chance. James Manfield going home first is a 76.7% chance of going home. That's 1,673 votes. Everybody else got like 100 votes. You know, Shea Coulee got 2 votes. There's 2 people on Reddit who think Shea Coulee is going to go home first.
Now,
I'd like to meet these idiots.
But let's clarify this.
It was probably James Mansfield voted for Shea.
James Mansfield and her boyfriend. But look,
I love James.
We love you, James. James is a friend. So let's clarify one thing. This is based on the videos.
Yeah.
Just the Meet the Queen videos, which I have to say, I don't think they're super reliable anymore because I feel like the most recent ones, the last couple seasons, I was so off.
Would you think Pearl was going to win based on her Meet the Queen's video? Because she was like, she looked like she was like stoned and out of it.
I don't remember. I don't remember that. I have to say the only one that really like struck me is when season 4, the Meet the Queen videos, and I saw Sharon Needles, and not because I'm from Pittsburgh, but that did catch my eye. But that character that she had on that video, I was like, okay, clearly she's going to be in the top. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just feel like she is just going to. Something's going to happen. She's going to be in the top 3.
It wasn't like Dragula where you had, 12 spooky horror queens fighting together. It was one spooky horror queen, and then the rest was like bland. But
not just spooky horror. She had a character, right? She's like, season 4 is going to be canceled. She had that whole, her character was just so amazing, and everyone else was like themselves just kind of talking.
That's true.
She really changed the whole idea.
Do you even remember Willem Belli's Meet the Queens?
No,
right? So in the poll, they said, who's going to make it to the halfway point? Who's going to go furthest halfway? Shea Coulee's number 1 with 87% of the vote. Sasha Velour and Peppermint a close second with similar numbers. Who has the greatest possibility of making top 3? Shea Coulee, Sasha Velour, Peppermint. This may be wrong, people, and this may be dead wrong.
Well, this is also guessing, but this is also when you say halfway mark, that's like post-Snatch Game, right?
Yeah.
It's usually post-Snatch Game is halfway.
Who would you like to see make it to the top 3? Sasha Velour. Nina Bonina Brown is number 2, who's fighting with the world. Shea Coulee is top 3. Now, Nina Bonina Brown is an interesting person. I don't know if you've been following her.
A little bit.
She's extremely combative.
She like the Jasmine Masters of season 9.
Have you seen her dressed as Jasmine Masters? Oh my God, it's amazing.
Hilarious.
No.
So Nina Bonina Brown is this chameleon of makeup. She's one of those Instagram people that can paint her face to look like anything. So you remember that one woman who was painting herself to look like Sylvester Stallone? It's kind of the same idea, the trompe-l'oeil, the
I haven't seen all that.
Makeup tricks.
Okay.
And so she takes construction paper and just ordinary household materials and transforms herself into this beautiful creature of her own imagination.
Oh, there's the Jasmine Masters, Nina Bonina. Wow.
Yeah. So she's really, really, really good at theatrical transformative makeup. But at the same time, Nina Bonina Brown, bless you, my child, it's like she feels like she's in the pit in the Poltergeist movie, and the fans are the skeletons crawling out the mom. You remember that scene in the movie? And she's just like, ah!
Because she's getting a lot of negative reaction from fans.
Well, I think fans are just gonna, they're gonna prod the cattle, and they're gonna try to see what kind of reaction they can get from them. And instead of like laughing it off or taking it with a grain of salt, she takes it very personally.
Well, okay, she needs to take a little lesson from Trixie Mattel, because when I interviewed Trixie for the book, and you remember when Trixie was first like the Meet the Queens, people were like, "What in the hell is this Queen's makeup? Like, what?"
It really fucked up people's minds.
They didn't get it. Like and that fact, I think
some still
people
don't.
hated her. I know.
Some still do.
Well, I understand, but
You better.
Okay, but I feel like.
What about my butt? I'm just kidding.
I feel like as we got to know her and we got to see her quick wit and how funny she is, and even off the show, and now with her show with Katya on Wow Presents, like I think she's become a fan favorite, and I think and she's extremely memorable now. And I wonder if a lot of the people who saw her early on, that's all they saw was just her makeup. So maybe Nina Bonita Brown will become a fan favorite, and we'll all learn more about her, and we'll all start to love her. I don't know.
She is, so from talking to producers in the past, the reason they didn't have Shea Coulee in past seasons was because they wanted to have someone like her who had a really big ego come across as a villain. And obviously from the marketing and from the way the videos are being presented, that's not the case this season. Shea Coulee just suffers no fools. And so she's going to probably butt heads with some of the contestants from knowing her as well as we do. But at the same time, Nina Bonita Brown probably is going to be somebody who's going to be,
She may. It sounds like she has a sour disposition already.
Yeah.
So something.
Maybe something
that's
went
a clue.
down.
Something went down, right?
Oh, no.
Is that how it works?
I guess. And so according to the audience polls, Peppermint is the top at 34%.
She's the top?
She could be.
She's Miss Congeniality, who Peppermint's doing a lot of interviews in the press. Most recently, she did an interview with Cosmopolitan magazine.
I saw that. Was it an interview or that video? Was it the video?
And then there's a full video.
That video was really neat.
Attached to it.
I thought that was a really neat thing that Cosmo did.
But everyone's calling Peppermint on not trimming her lace front wig and leaving the weave. The mesh on the front.
Right.
Listen, if they can clock something on a queen, they're going to clock her.
That's fine.
So I called my face just about it. I'm like, she's your neighbor. Go up there with a pair of scissors and cut that. Fix that wig.
Like, oh, honey. She's like, she did it to show people that she was wearing a wig. I was like, okay.
And who do you feel?
She'll probably win Miss Congeniality, right? She seems very
Peppermint's
likable.
so likable. You guys heard her on the podcast.
Yeah.
She's super nice. Charlie Hides and Valentina are also very likable. And James Mansfield,
I don't know if Charlie Hides is likable, though. A lot of people are not liking him online, right? He's not getting a good...
She and Charlie Hides are fighting with Jujubee. So Charlie Hides sent a message to Jujubee saying, "Hey, if you're ever in the UK, meet me backstage. I heard you're going to the UK. Meet me backstage. Let's kiki, So Jujubee goes to see her show and comes up to her afterwards and says, "Hey, I was just in your hometown." And she's like, "I'm sorry, who are you?" Like, give her this really weird, icy distance response. And so Jujubee just let her have it on social media.
Oh, Lord, I did not see that.
And it's, fireworks.
No.
Who has the greatest possibility of winning? Shea Coulee at 49.7% of the vote. People are really living for what Shea Coulee is serving. Of course, you guys have seen Shea on Cooking with Drag Queens, and she's a huge sensation on her Instagram. I just saw her, ran into her down the street. And I said to her, I was like, I'm enjoying looking forward to seeing the season. Trying to get any information.
And you're not getting anything.
I said, she's like, oh, I'm getting eliminated first. And I was like, no, that's James Mansfield's job. Based on that.
Right.
Now, people don't necessarily want Shea Coulee to win. The audience polls say Sasha Velour, not Shea Coulee, is the audience they're rooting for at 25% of the vote.
I feel like we may have met Sasha last year at Drag in Austin, the International Drag Festival.
Yeah, so Sasha
I know we picked up a couple
Really?
of her magazines
Really?
there. Yeah, I think so, right?
Yeah, so Sasha Velour publishes a drag magazine, and she said she was going to interview us for the magazine, but then she got on Drag Race.
She's got better things to
But
do
she's
now.
a person who's been listening to the podcast for most of her life, and she and her boyfriend texted me and said, "We're huge fans, so if we're in town, we'll
do something
great.
eventually.
We'll do
We'll
it
hold her
eventually.
to it.
That's great.
Sasha Velour is
And you know, it's really hard to find that fabric velour. We tried to find velour.
It's
It is.
impossible.
It's really
Is
hard
it?
to find. I don't
It's not
think
in
they
fashion
make
anymore.
They don't make it as much anymore because, when you look at the Star Trek uniforms from the original series, that's made out of velour.
Yeah.
And we went everywhere looking for
You
velour.
couldn't find
couldn't
it.
find it, no.
Wow.
So for people who may not be familiar with Sasha, her visual aesthetic is kind of like Nosferatu. If she does, she literally makes herself look like Nosferatu, but if Nosferatu was a drag queen. And there's other looks where she's very attached to not wearing wigs, sort of like season 1 contestant. Angina, yeah. So there's very much an Angina similarity. She has these Frida Kahlo thick eyebrows, and she's somebody who knows her drag history and certainly is very well spoken and an extremely good writer on writing about drag. So it's great that they have somebody like that nested and going very far, and the audience really wants to see Sasha Velour win, and she's very charming. And then ultimately, in the final question is, will there be, who's the 14th queen that RuPaul talks about, but we don't see?
So I didn't realize that he mentioned 14 queens in some of the press he was doing.
No, this is the question. Do you think there will be a returning queen? Because they show 13 queens, but RuPaul's press is all like 14, 14,
I didn't
14,
realize
right?
the disconnect there.
There's the numbers don't add up.
Wow. So what's going to happen?
Well, we know what's going to happen, but we want to know what you guys think. So post comments on feastoffun.com and tell us who do you think is going home first, or making it all the way,
or popping up in a box.
Popping out of a box.
Shangela.
It's going to be Shangela.
Ooh, again? What would that be? 3 times?
Listen, they should just give Shangela her own TV show.
They should.
Well, I would agree with that.
Have you seen? Because I know you have to hit a plane soon, so you're probably gonna have to get going. So we're gonna have to wrap this up. But I want to do a shout out to Chrissy Yamaguchi, who has the best tweet of the day. She tweets to Nancy Kerrigan: "So excited for you to be on Dancing with the Stars! Can't wait to see you grace that ballroom floor. Break a leg." Somebody had to tweet that, right?
And Lindsay Lohan is making a comeback by giving advice to other people on what not to do, maybe. Her exciting new prank reality TV series, The Antisocial Network. Lindsay Lohan hijacks people's social media and tries to make their lives better if they pull off 3 challenges and win money.
Oh, Lord.
I
don't know what to think of this.
She's the self-help guru now. She's the White Oprah, right?
Yes,
well, her mother was
White
called the White Oprah by D-List.
Oh, that's right. Oh, my God. How funny.
I don't get it.
So, I don't know.
I'm glad to see,
Yeah.
I'm glad to see she's actually doing something and she's not just like in a gutter somewhere.
And it's constructive advice. It's, basically pursue your dreams, reach out to people, stay humble, be kind, collaborate. All the things, what's true in Jackie Huba, wrong drag queen.
Lady
You're
Trinity.
confusing me with Jackie Beats.
Well, the first name.
Just the first name.
What's true in your books is true. This is why you're sort of making this career, giving this advice to these corporations. Fortune 500 companies are hiring you to speak to their employees to teach them how to think like drag queens.
Well, let's see how many of them do that. No, but I've been very excited to see how many companies are really trying to help women be the best they can be, because that's where a lot of the confidence issues are. And as we saw, the criticism, too, we talked about. So
right.
I'm excited that people are focused on helping women and anybody, be as confident as they can be and be the best person they can be. So. And
diversity is the critical success of successful companies, I would argue.
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of statistics around women-run companies or women on the boards of companies, and those companies have financially better results than all men-led companies.
Yeah.
And so I love that we're seeing this. There's one VC in Austin that I'm good friends with who is a woman who only will work and fund companies that are headed by women.
Sure.
Because,
that makes a lot of sense.
For financial sense.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it makes no sense.
They did that, and what it was, who's the guy who just did that documentary, Michael Moore, on Who Do We Invade Next? And that's what they discovered, like in Iceland, that had that financial collapse. And the banks that did okay were banks that had a lot of women on board because they're not, they're more risk averse.
Yes.
And also, too, it's, when you have women on or people of color or, people from different nations of origin, it's just they have a different point of view and can see things that other people who have the same kind of background cannot
Which
see.
is why Teen Vogue is kicking ass today.
Yeah.
I hope you know that.
Oh, yeah. I'm loving Teen Vogue.
Teen Vogue is like speaking out in terms of what is happening politically like nobody else. And they've put in a young African-American woman as the editor-in-chief. I mean, they were talking about Dakota Pipeline before the election. I mean...
Oh, sure. All sorts of trans issues, all sorts of LGBT issues.
Yes.
They're on top of all of it.
Yes, on diversity, on top of Black Lives Matter, like all of it. It's amazing.
It gives you hope for the generation.
Why is it so important for a teen magazine for teens to be so progressive?
Because young girls are interested in everything, makeup and politics. Like, that's what they're trying to say.
And ultimately, empowering young women, builds...
Makes us all better.
An audience stronger.
Yeah, I mean, it makes all of our communities better when women are better citizens and when women speak out for themselves and when women are represented. So I love what they are doing. I can't remember, her name's like Elaine Weinroth. I want to say I follow her on Instagram. She's amazing. But she is the reason why... I can't believe, like, there were days when the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, like after the State of the, it wasn't the State of the Union, but that speech that he gave to the full Congress, where everyone was like, oh, he's very presidential today, Wall Street Journal. New York Times, oh, we're seeing a pivot. Teen Vogue, here's the things that he said that were wrong and untruthful. Like, hello. Like, they're doing sometimes better reporting, I think, sometimes than the mainstream medias, and all power to them.
Well, we appreciate and value your thoughts and your books and your contributions, not just to drag, but to the world of business. And we always love having you on the show, Jackie. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for your support, you guys, too. I love you guys. You guys have been doing this for so long, and I'm so happy that you consider me as someone who's valuable to chat with for your audience. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. You are very worthy.
You
deserve that spot.
Worthy. Thank you.
Now, unfortunately, it's time to go.
Get the fuck out of here.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I didn't write a RuPaul thing. I'm sorry, Jackie Huba, but you're fiercely have to go away now. Or some puns. Remember, guys, Feast of Fun is made possible because of your financial support. We have fantastic T-shirts inspired by great moments in drag. Go to our store, feastoffun.com/store. Many of those shirts are manufactured and shipped.
Made by us.
Made by us with our own two hands.
And I get your email address.
There's a T-shirt that we just started called the Drag Wars: The Shade Awakens. Get it at feastoffun.com/store. Punctuate with a fan. Oops, smashed something.
And if you'd like to make a donation to the show, you can do that at feastoffun.com/donate because your contribution to the show is what makes the show happen.
Follow Jackie Huba on Instagram, Facebook land, Twitter land. What's the
All
handle?
the lands.
It's Jackie Huba on everything. And then there's also the Lady Trinity on Instagram and Lady Trinity on Twitter.
Oh, you have a drag queen on. There's a Trinity competing with you on Drag Race this year.
Trinity, whatever.
Trinity K. Bonet.
She's not a lady, though.
There's
right?
lots of Trinities, but there's only
Trinity
one
Taylor.
Lady Trinity.
That's right.
Jackie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.